Up next, we have achievement number 6, which is Energizer in Outlast. An achievement that is unlocked if you are able to finish the game in insane mode without reloading the camera's batteries. Now, Outlast itself is a game where you explore an abandoned asylum full of monstrous, mutated humans, and you basically have to hide from them because you can't fight back. So yeah, you explore the asylum, try and get through your way through, only armed with your camera, which allows you to see in the dark with its night vision. And you end up hiding under beds, lockers, wherever you can, to uncover the truth of whatever happened at this asylum. And the achievement is basically to play the game on its hardest difficulty, which the enemies are at their deadliest and can basically find you without even trying. But the big kicker is that you only have one life. So yeah, if you screw up once, it's all the way back to the beginning of the game with you. But since the developers didn't think that was hard enough, the second part of the achievement is to not reload your camera batteries, which basically means you only have a limited set use of night vision throughout the entire game. Now, what did I do for this achievement to unlock it? Basically, what I did was look up a video guide and follow it to a T as much as I could. And, well, that kind of, in the end, really worked really well. And basically what would happen is I keep redoing it, get to a section, die probably, then just get back to that same section, then continue the video from there. I mean, I did it so many times that I basically ended up speedrunning the whole game. And also because of this, all the scares and horrors the game has to offer have kind of been nullified to me. I also had to memorize the dark locations within the game so I didn't use much battery life. Especially when I went outside, it's pitch black, so much to the point that using a bit of night vision out there is actually something I had to do, as well as needing to play as stealthily as possible in the sections I was in danger, and also patiently, since I needed to stay in locations where the enemies couldn't get to me or didn't know I was there, and had to wait for them to go away. Another useful thing that I did was never pick up any batteries that I found, since I never wanted to accidentally reload the camera. I also needed to memorize who could kill me in one hit and who couldn't, because I do remember the guide that I used, you do get hit once. There were also some enemies that I had to learn how to completely bypass so I could just skip them and just move on. And speaking of enemies, Chris Walker, the guy that you meet at the beginning, is an asshole. He's the enemy you encounter the most, and the one I mostly died to. But that's not to exclude enemies like the twins or the wall rider. Honestly, all of them are pretty annoying to deal with and stressful, since if you make one wrong move, it's all over. Then we have the final parts of the game, like when you drop your camera, they can get it back, and when you get it back, there's a bunch of enemies there. And you have to run for your life in a dark room, but it's actually best to use your night vision here, since it's the last time in the game that you actually need it. Another thing that I did was collect the final file before the end, like the one at the machine, so that way I didn't accidentally collect it instead of pressing the button when I was being chased. Then we have the jump at the end, which apparently is a game killer, because if you don't jump just right, you fall to your death and, well, game over. But luckily I was able to jump and not have any issues. And in the end, thankfully this is kind of a short game, so although the achievement is still very annoying, it overall is not that bad, honestly. Although I did hear from a friend that the sequel is much longer and harder, but also not as good. Alright, time for achievement number 7, which is Sega Superstar in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. And to unlock this one, you must earn your triple star license. Who would have thought that a sequel to a mediocre Mario Kart ripoff would end up being one of the best racing games of all time? I mean, this game just feels so good to play with its drift system, the great tracks that it has, the great music, and the added bonus of the actual transform of it, like the transformed part of it, with you going to the skies and to the waters. And it's also neat to see many familiar faces amongst Sega's ranks, such as Sonic obviously, Crazy Taxi, and Nights into Dreams, and even Super Monkey Ball. On top of that, this game also has many multiple modes instead of just the regular Grand Prix, such as the time trials, the mission mode, and of course the battle arena. So now about the achievement itself, which is to basically get the best license in the game. And your licenses go up based off of how much of the game you have completed. Like, you start off with a C, then you go to B, A, 1 star, then finally triple star. So basically what this achievement is asking you to do is 100% the game. And in order to do this, you must complete all the Grand Prix on the hardest difficulty, both regular and mirror, get all the stars in World Tour, unlock all the characters, beat all the staff ghosts and time trials, unlock a vast majority of the stickers, and even a little bit extra after that. And these requirements is how it became the only 360 achievement officially on this list. Now honestly, although this is a hard achievement, definitely, the only part that I found truly difficult was the time trials, but I'll get into why later. Okay, so the main key to success throughout all the game modes is to master the drift and stunt mechanics. If you can do this, then you're golden. Now the drifting is self-explanatory, as whenever you do so for long enough, you can get a mini boost. And if you drift for long enough, you can get a level 3 or level 2 mini boost, and those are very helpful. And the drifting can also be done while in the air or on a boat, which in the boat it's basically the same as the car, but when you're in the air you actually have to actually fly sideways, and it can be pretty tough to get a hang of it, but once you do, you're good. Now for the stunts is whenever you're about to do a jump, like you're in the air, you can use the right stick to move your car around and do stunts, which also give you mini boosts, which are integral to beating everyone. Now before you even start this achievement, one of the things that you must do, one requirement, is that you have to go to the Grand Prix and complete all the cups on hard to unlock expert for everything else. Since without expert you can't get all the World Tour stars or the highest level of ghosts in the time trials. And I say to do this because obviously it would suck real hard to do everything on hard, then just do the Grand Prix, then unlock a whole new difficulty, then have to go through everything again, which is a mistake I almost ended up making, although I did catch myself quick enough. Alright, with that note out of the way, let's actually talk about the Grand Prix. And honestly, the Grand Prix are probably the easiest part of the game, since the AI aren't complete unrelenting monsters like in Mario Kart, and the items themselves aren't as debilitating. Since there are no items that can fuck you over when you're in first place, and the fact that the All-Star item, which is obviously this game's equivalent to the star, is not powerful enough to completely screw you over either. I mean, the best ways to get first every time, or like a high placement, you just gotta be smart with your items both offensively and defensively, and you're good. Place blowfishes onto boosts or transformation areas, smuggle the All-Star or get lucky and get it in a high place, take advantage of air sections and get out of water sections as soon as possible, use the All-Star and water sections, try to screw over the current top scoring AI if you have a chance, don't always try to go for the shortcuts or super items, and mastering the drift, as I stated before, and you honestly should stay far ahead of the pack most of the time. And that's basically all there is to the Grand Prix. Next up is the World Tour mode, which is basically mission mode. Like, you'll select a mission, get stars for completing it on whatever difficulty you're doing it on, then be able to unlock more of the missions, as well as, like, characters and, I believe, maps? No, not maps. And these missions range from doing basic races to drift challenges, boost challenges, and traffic challenges. Now, the key to completing World Tour is just to simply keep doing the missions over and over again until you aced it and get the 4 stars within it. as repetition is truly key. Now on to the time trials. To start off with, there is some good news, as you only need to do the regular versions of the track, not the mirror versions. But the bad news is that, like I said before, these trials are still the hardest thing to do for this achievement, since you must learn each track and the quickest way to traverse them, and you need to have the drift mastered for this, or don't even bother trying. Now you can use any character and mods that you work best with, but it is possible to get them all done as standard Sonic, as I was able to do all but one of them as him. Now the best strategies that I had used were to try and imitate the ghosts as much as I could and have a level 3 boost ready combined with all of my item boost used at the same time by holding down the A button right before I'd cross the finish line and reset the lap. Now, I will say that the tracks in this game are overall really well designed. You can get into a groove with them and just pass all these time trials, but there is one that is just completely awful. And the worst track in the game is the Billy Hatcher map due to its awful turns, bad water part, and the final section is just downright horrendous. I mean, this map was so bad that I had to change from Sonic to Shadow to beat it. Oh, and the Burning Ranger stage also blows. Finally, we have the stickers. These being mini challenges that you must complete. And these challenges range from getting first in a race 10 times, or hitting an opponent 100 times with snowballs, or winning a race on a certain track while playing as a certain character. Now, most of these stickers will come naturally. Others you will have to play multiplayer or the battle modes to get. And surprisingly, some of the multiplayer ones are actually obtainable since there are actual lobbies playing the racing part. Unfortunately, there's no one ever playing the battle part, so you have to find a way to do those ones on your own. And one final note I'll say about the stickers is that you don't actually have to get every single one. You only need most of them, which is good news because there's one that you need 4 controllers for, which is complete bullshit. Anyway, in the end, after completing all those requirements, you are still not done and probably only at 95%. Now you have to go for a bit of an extra mile and complete a few ghosts on mirror mode, unlock more mods, or get a few more stickers to finally push you over to the 100% threshold. And if you truly are desperate enough, you can get the DLC, and it comes with a new character that you can unlock all the mods for, a new set of stickers, as well as a new track that you can beat all the time trial ghosts on. And even after all that, it still probably won't unlock, because it didn't for me and many others. So to remedy that, just start up a race, time trial, or world tour event, and it should pop after you finish it. Alright, next on the list is achievement number 8, Personal Decorator in Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And how you unlock this one is by earning all the campaign decorations. Oh, Black Ops 3, the game that saw Advanced Warfare's new advanced movement system and said, we can do better than that, by just saying fuck it and giving everyone jetpacks. Now, I'll be honest, I know Call of Duties are mainly known for their multiplayer, but I wasn't really into the multiplayer in this game. I kinda just played it and that was it. I don't really know how badly the jetpacks screwed it up or made it better. Yeah, the multiplayer was just fine. But on the other hand, you had this game's incarnation of the Zombies game mode, which is often considered the best zombies of the whole series, even if it is the first one where you need to look up guides just to survive. But I digress. This achievement is about the campaign, which is unfortunately not one of the series' better outings. Or at least I should say the story really sucks, because the campaign gameplay itself is fine, if not a bit repetitive, but you could probably say that about any first-person shooter. But regardless, this campaign sees you far off into the future of, I believe, the 2080s or 90s, where, like, cyber soldiers exist now and you have become one of them. And with these enhancements, you are now able to take down enemies in new ways, like being able to control their robotic systems or making them implode. But these systems are susceptible and your teammates all get infected by a rogue AI, so the game basically boils down to taking out your teammates one by one to stop the infection. But then it turns out, oh, this is actually all a dream that some guy's having while he dies, or something stupid like that. And then you just top that off with the fact that this barely has anything to do with the last 2 Black Ops games, like no connections at all. And then, yeah, that's why this one sucks. But my tangent about the story aside, this is probably one of the more forgettable Call of Duties, definitely. It's just the normal Call of Duty fare of shooting people, except now they're robots. Alright, with that all out of the way, let's move on to the actual achievement itself. And the achievement involves you getting all 12 of the campaign awards. And I'm just gonna go ahead and list off all 12 of these. First up is Master of Arms, which requires you to get all the campaign weapons, attachments, and camouflages. Next up is Dedicated to Excellence, which requires you to fully upgrade all cyber cores. Next up is Armament Superiority, or Armament, I guess, which requires you to unlock and purchase all weapons, lethals, tacticals, and tactical rigs. Then we have Heroic Service and Legendary Service, which is basically completing the campaign on Veteran or Realistic. Then we have Immortal Flame, which requires you to complete every mission in the game without dying on Veteran. Then we have Chronicler, which is just get all the collectibles. Above and Beyond, which wants you to complete all accolades for all the missions. Duty Calls, which wants you just to complete all campaign challenges. Tried and True, which is earn a score of 35,000 in combat immersion. Grim Reaper, which is just kill 2,000 enemies. And then Full Honors, which requires the player to earn all other campaign decorations. I hope that's the only list I had to read off for this video. Anyway, from that list, you can see that there are actually some easily done things that you'll get naturally on it. Like killing 2,000 enemies, or just unlocking everything, or getting all the collectibles. I mean, heck, one of them is just literally unlocking the other 11. But just how some are easy to get, some are very hard to get, and others are quite tedious to get. Like, obviously, one of the harder ones is getting through the game on Realistic, which is a new difficulty mode for this game in which literally everything can, like, kill you with one hit. And yeah, it's basically you fighting tooth and nail against the hardest type of enemies with like pinpoint accuracy and whatever else, and if you screw up just once and die, then you're back to the last checkpoint. But one thing that can help you out a bit is the fact that this game allows you to have custom classes in the campaign, so you're able to basically pick the best weapon and stick with it throughout the entire thing. Like I used the BRM LMG, and that really worked for me. And then there's the cyber core abilities that I mentioned earlier, and how they could be really useful, like the one that I said makes enemies implode, and then there's apparently also a camo one that you could probably spam. But in the end, this is basically like any other veteran campaign where you just have to stick with it until you beat it. Now, as for completing all the missions on Veteran without dying, that is a different story, because it involves you playing this campaign in co-op, which is something Treyarch decided to add to this campaign for whatever reason. Anyway, to get this, just simply have like a duo, or maybe even more if you really want to, and just basically have one person always stay behind. That way, whenever the person up front goes down, you can just have them crawl to you and get revived or respawn back in. And it's really not that hard. Then we have what I believe is considered the hardest thing to do overall, which is getting 35,000 points in the combat simulator. And of course, the way this thing works is that the higher difficulty you get, the more points you would get for every enemy you kill. And I'm pretty sure the only way you can get even 35,000 points is by doing it on the hardest difficulty. So basically what this boils down to is doing the entirety of the combat simulator on Realistic. But unfortunately, I have no real tips for this part, because when I was going for this achievement, one of my friends who was also going for this achievement showed me how I could basically entirely skip this part. Now, I don't know exactly how to do this, or if it's still even in the game, but basically what we would do was enter the combat simulator, then somehow leave it, but it would still think we were in it, and then all you would have to do is re-enter it, set it to Realistic, and then you were invincible. And you could basically, yeah, just go through everything without being hit or killed once. And then yeah, you were done. Alright, that knocks out all the hard stuff, so all that's left to talk about is the tedious stuff. Starting with the accolades, which were basically mini challenges that you had to do within every mission. Challenges like ending a chase within 45 seconds or defeating 3 enemies with a grenade. I mean, there were probably harder ones that took a long time to get, or a few tries, but I can't think of any. I mean, these really do just boil down to replaying the missions over and over again until you get them all done. Next, we have the camos, which is basically getting, I believe, either 1,000 or 1,500 kills with every single weapon, which at first doesn't sound too bad, but then you realize there's like 32 weapons in the game. Although I do believe that there is a bit of a bone thrown with the sidearms and the rocket launchers having less. Like 500, I believe, or 200. Now, with the camos, you would expect the solution to just be keep replaying the campaign missions over and over again, maybe pick the one with the most amount of enemies, until you get them all done. But in reality, you actually don't need to do that because one of the missions, the 7th one I believe, has a part that has infinitely spawning enemies. It's in the part where the gigantic wall gets put down and you get the spike launcher. In the back right, there's gonna be continuous enemies just funneling through the doors. So then you think, okay, so just go to that mission, go to that part, and just keep killing enemies until you get all the weapons done. Unfortunately, it's not that simple either. Now, the reason I think this is going to be tricky is a bit hard to explain, but I'm going to try my best. Now, this game seems to track your progress in the campaign like the last mission you did. So if you were to do like 5 missions, then redo the 3rd one, and then hit resume campaign, it would go back to the 5th one, which I believe is the same for all other Call of Duties, but the way this one seems to work is that whenever you go back to replay a mission, it doesn't save your progress unless you do the entire mission. So you can't play up to that part of the mission, get a bunch of kills for one of your weapons, like complete it, and then quit to then just swap it out for another weapon. It won't keep the progress. You would instead have to go to that part of the mission, get as many kills as you can, then complete the mission, which is just not... It's not convenient at all, since you would have to keep replaying it over and over again instead of just being put to that one part continuously. Now, as for me, I somehow managed to get lucky, and my campaign progress ended up stopping on the 6th mission. So what I basically did was complete the 6th mission, then once I got to the 7th mission, I just stuck there and got all the weapons done. Now, one last thing I'll say about this is that when you beat the campaign, you get put back onto the 1st mission, so I don't know if continuously playing the campaign back to the 7th mission will actually fix this issue, because, well, I never did it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that actually ends up working. But regardless, this is probably going to be the thing that you spend the most time getting, and once you do all the camos for the weapons, then boom, you got the achievement. Alright, here we have achievement number 9, which is Head Counselor in Friday the 13th, the game. And for this achievement to be unlocked, you must play 1,000 matches as a counselor. Now, unfortunately, this is basically a repeat offender, and everything that I said about the other achievement for playing 1,000 matches as Jason basically applies here. The only real difference is that you're the one now telling Jason where you spawned in at so he can come over and kill you, and that this achievement is much more obtainable if you were just playing the main game, since you're always bound to play as a counselor. Now, because of how boring this entry is, I'm gonna go ahead and sneak in an unofficial achievement here to replace it. And that achievement is, The Shadows Rushed Me in Max Payne 3. And in order to get this one, you must unlock and complete New York Minute Hardcore mode. Oh, Max Payne 3, the game that I bought literally just because it had a Rockstar logo on it. Because my logic was, it's Rockstar, they made Grand Theft Auto, so it has to be good. And, well, I wasn't wrong. In the end. I mean, even though my kid self had no clue what was going on story-wise in this game, I still had fun with it. And yes, eventually I would find myself playing the first 2 games, and they're pretty good too. although I do think the second one is a bit overrated. But anyway, Max Payne 3, just like its predecessors, is a third-person action shooter game. And this game sees Max in a radically new location of Sao Paulo, Brazil, as he is now the bodyguard for a family of wealthy elites. And in true Max Payne fashion, there is trouble in paradise when some of the family members start getting kidnapped, leading to Max needing to save them as well as expose the bigger conspiracy at play. But enough about that, let's move on to the actual achievement and the 2 steps to completing it. And the first step, as described, is to simply unlock New York Minute Hardcore mode. And to do this, you must first unlock New York Minute mode, which is not that hard at all, as you simply just need to beat the story once on any difficulty. Then you have to beat New York Minute mode itself, in which you have to go through every single level individually and beat them while under a timer, and you cannot die or fail an objective, because if you do, then you have to restart the whole level. But I will say that before you even attempt either version of New York Minute mode, that it would be best to get all your weapons gold, because doing that will give them more damage. And trust me, you need every advantage you can get for this. Anyway, after you have conquered New York Minute mode, it is now time to move on to step 2 of this achievement, which is beating New York Minute mode hardcore. And as the name implies, hardcore mode is not just limited to one mission, but instead the entire game. And now you must beat all 14 missions back to back all in one go without once dying, failing an objective, or having a friendly character be killed, all while being timed throughout the entire thing. Now to start off, I should probably properly explain the timer. Now, I believe it starts off with 1 minute and goes up every time you get a kill, with body shots I believe being worth 5 seconds and headshots being worth 6 seconds. And there's also other factors like explosion kills, which I believe is worth a lot as well. Now obviously you don't want it to go all the way down or else you will lose, but luckily there's 2 reasons why this will probably never happen. The first reason is because the timer stops or pauses when you're going to the unskippable cutscenes, which, let's be honest, if it didn't, that would have been complete bullshit. And the second reason is due to it being continuous, and the amount of enemies that you end up killing throughout each mission. By the time of the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th or 6th mission, it gets so high that it really doesn't matter that much anymore. After a certain point, you will be able to take more of your time. So now you could shift the timer to one of your lesser worries, and focus in on what matters most, your own survival. Now the keys to success is to be as precise and swift with your aiming as possible, since you want to get through every enemy engagement as quickly as you can, especially in the slow-mo parts where if you miss just like one enemy, you end up dying. Be smart with your bullet time usage, always have some ammo left over. Get as many painkillers as possible. I actually looked up a guide to find where all of them were. And of course, be smart with their usage, like if you're nearly dead, use them, but if you're only like half dead or below, don't use them. And also be proactive against the little hindrances, such as finding out how to turn off the crappy laser sights when you get those types of weapons, which is by pressing the back button. And one final note is always be careful against like ledges, because if you accidentally walk off it or jump off it or whatever, you're just dead. It's over. Now, one saving grace that this game has while going for this achievement is the second chance in the form of the near-death painkiller mechanic, where if you lose all of your health but still have at least 1 bottle, you can take down whoever got the last shot on you and, well, live. But you have to be very vigilant about where your enemies are and how much ammo you have in your clips, because if you end up going into painkiller slowdown mode and don't have a shot on whoever took you down, or have no more ammo, you're just dead. I know this since it happened to me a few times. Another tip that I could think of is probably looking up a guide and following it as closely as possible, similar to what I said in the Energizer achievement. You know, to find out what the best course of action is, like where to hide, where the enemies come from, whatever else. I mean, there are definitely parts of this game where you're gonna need to look up what to do to survive. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I did this in the beginning, but eventually I did the mission so many times that that eventually I just memorized them, so eventually I just started brute forcing it. But yeah, that's really all I could say for this achievement, other than what I believe what was the hardest parts of it, which were the sniper battle in Chapter 3, the dock shootout in Chapter 5, as well as the boat chase in Chapter 5. Anytime you're in the favelas, moving in on out-of-view enemies while they have the shot on you, anytime going up against a heavy enemy, the boss fights, especially the final one, the terminal shootout, destroying the APC in Chapter 11, and the whole runway finale where my successful attempt was almost thwarted not only by nearly dying during the chase, but also by almost letting the plane take off because I kept missing my shots with the grenade launcher. This brings us to the 10th and final achievement, Tales of Glory in Deadlight Director's Cut. And what you have to do to unlock this achievement is beat the game in Nightmare mode. Now, Deadlight is a 2D action platformer set during like a 1980s or 1990s zombie apocalypse. And it follows the story of Randall as he tries to infiltrate, like, I believe a government facility to save, I want to say his wife or his kid. And let's see what else. Oh, the game tries to be, I guess, artsy by having heavy shadings and all the zombies not actually be zombies but like shadow creatures. Yeah, if you can't tell already, I'm not the biggest fan of this game. So much so that most of this gameplay isn't even mine, since I didn't rebuy this game for this video. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. To start this off, I actually had played this game previously, well, the original version of this game, when it was a game with gold, like a free game, however far back that was. And, well, I played it, and I really wasn't even that big into it back then. But it wasn't too bad in the achievements department, so I ended up getting them all. Fast forward ahead to when Game Pass became a thing, and, well, one day while browsing the games on it, I found this version, the director's cut version of Deadlight on it. And I thought that it would be just as easy as the original version because I expected it not to have any new achievements in it, but boy was I wrong. Now it did have all 30 of the original achievements from the original game, but now there were 2 new ones, one each for the 2 new game modes. An achievement to defeat 200 enemies in a crappy new survival mode, which was only easy because of a glitch spot. And then there was this achievement to beat Nightmare mode. And much like the previous Outlast and Max Payne 3 achievements, it's essentially a do the game without dying challenge, but this time with checkpoints. So whenever you get to a new chapter, which there are 3 of them, if you were to die, you would get put back to the beginning of whichever chapter you were on, instead of being brought all the way back to the beginning of the game. So then you might be wondering, why is this achievement so difficult if you get checkpoints? Well, I'll be honest, 2/3 of this game isn't half bad, but the other 1/3 will kick your ass hard. In other words, it isn't really Chapter 1 or Chapter 3 that makes this hard, it's Chapter 2. Chapter 1 has a few semi-difficult parts that I remember dying a few times at, but nothing too egregious, while Chapter 3 I remember being a joke and only dying once in it. Overall, both are short and easy and can be breezed right on through. But then we have Chapter 2, which is not only so unnecessarily long, but it's just also unfairly difficult. With an entire section in the sewers avoiding traps, then when you finally get up to the top, you are chased down by a helicopter shooting at you with a minigun. And it's just the amount of times that I died at the ladder due to this game's slippery controls just still makes me mad to this day. I mean, there's one specific part that's been burned into my mind, which is when you're climbing over a wall or a fence and how your character can end up basically getting stuck on it. And how infuriating it is to die due to this game's poor controls just makes me happy that I never have to play this game again. Anyway, those were the big things, but there were other little annoying hindrances that got me killed, such as you not being able to have any health or stamina upgrades. I mean, there was one time where I survived the helicopter onslaught just to die to a zombie immediately after, since I had no health left. And if I remember correctly, there was also a jump that you had to make at the end of Chapter 2 right into an enemy with a gun that I also died at. And although I hated this game more and more every time I attempted this achievement, I just wanted to get it done out of sheer determination to fully complete this game before it was removed from the Game Pass. But in the end, I look at an event like this as one of the reasons I don't play games just for gamerscore anymore. I mean, I replayed a game that I already didn't like the first time around just to end up hating it even more. But yeah, I guess that's a good message to go out on. Play what you want to play, not what you have to play.
A choice I can live with. I'm ready.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1 and maybe some of my other videos. I guess that's it. Until next time. It's funny how half of the achievements in this video basically boiled down to beating the game without dying, while the other two are basically 100%ers.